The modern real estate industry is a dynamic environment shaped by specialization, regulation, and the diverse needs of consumers. A real estate professional entering today's marketplace must understand far more than how to open a lockbox or schedule a showing. The industry now demands a deeper knowledge of business structures, professional specialties, and the wide range of property types that make up the national marketplace. As we move into the study of conveyance contracts, it becomes essential to understand how these contracts fit into the larger framework of real estate activity as a business. Real estate today operates as an interconnected system of professionals working toward a single purpose: creating successful transactions. Developers transform raw land into communities. Appraisers analyze market data to determine value. Inspectors evaluate physical condition. Brokers and salespersons guide buyers and sellers through negotiation, contract formation, and closing. Property managers oversee income-producing buildings. Lending institutions provide financing that makes home ownership and investment possible. Every one of these specialties intersects, directly or indirectly, with the contract for sale. Because of this interconnectedness, the modern real estate salesperson is expected to understand the fundamentals of all major activities in the field. This includes knowing how properties are created, marketed, analyzed, financed, managed, and transferred. Each step in this chain influences the next. For example, a property manager's accurate accounting records support a smooth commercial sale. An appraiser's valuation supports financing. A lender's underwriting supports contract timelines. A title company's research supports a clean transfer of title at closing. The sale contract is the central hub that binds all these moving parts into a legal, enforceable roadmap for the transaction. Professional specialties in real estate mirror the complexity of the marketplace. Residential agents work with single-family homes, condominiums, and townhomes. Commercial specialists handle offices, retail, industrial, and multifamily properties. Land brokers work with raw acreage, zoning issues, and development potential. Business brokers navigate the sale of businesses that often include both real property and personal property. Each specialty uses contracts differently, but all rely on the same legal foundation: a properly written and enforceable agreement for the transfer of real estate. Property type specialization further defines how real estate professionals operate. Selling a suburban single-family home requires an understanding of neighborhood trends, buyer psychology, and home inspection issues. Selling a commercial warehouse requires knowledge of leases, cash flow, zoning, and environmental concerns. Selling a ranch involves water rights, access easements, and agricultural considerations. While each property type demands unique skills, the conveyance contract consistently serves as the legal anchor for transferring ownership. It reflects the unique needs of each property type, while still following universal contract principles that apply nationwide. By understanding business functions, professional roles, and property types, a real estate professional is better prepared to navigate the complexities of contract formation. With this foundation established, we now transition into the core subject of this chapter: the real estate contract for sale, the most fundamental legal instrument used to transfer property rights. Contract for sale. Overview and purpose. A real estate sale contract is the legally binding agreement in which a buyer agrees to purchase a specific parcel of real estate and a seller agrees to convey ownership under mutually accepted terms. It is the central document of the real estate transaction, guiding every step from negotiation to closing. Without a valid and enforceable contract, there is no sale, no transfer of title, and no legal basis for buyer and seller obligations. Real estate transactions generally unfold in 3 stages. The first stage is negotiation, where buyers and sellers exchange offers and counteroffers until they reach agreement on all essential terms. The second stage is the pre-closing period, where each party carries out the obligations agreed to in the contract, such as securing financing, completing inspections, ordering title work, and preparing closing documents. The third stage is closing, where the seller delivers the deed, the buyer pays the purchase price, and ownership transfers. At this point, the contract has been fully executed and ceases to exist as a binding agreement. Real estate sale contracts go by many names, such as agreement of sale, contract of purchase and sale, earnest money contract, and purchase agreement. Regardless of the label used, the function is the same: to outline the rights, duties, timelines, and conditions necessary for a legally recognized transfer of ownership. Legal characteristics of a contract for sale. The sale contract is an executory agreement, meaning the promises made within it have not yet been fully performed. The seller has not yet delivered title, and the buyer has not yet paid the price. The contract remains executory until the closing process is complete. All owners of the property must sign the sale contract. If a married couple owns the property, both spouses should sign the agreement to avoid title issues at closing. While failure of a spouse to sign may not invalidate the contract, it can prevent the property from transferring free and clear, leading to disputes or delays. To be enforceable, a sale contract must satisfy the legal elements of contract formation. This includes mutual consent, competent parties, lawful purpose, and consideration. It must be in writing, clearly identify the property being sold, specify the purchase price, identify the parties, and include signatures. Real estate contracts cannot be enforced if they are oral, even if both parties verbally agree to all terms. No party can sue the other for performance without a written document. Either party may assign their contractual rights unless the contract prohibits assignment. Assignment transfers both benefits and obligations. If the assignee fails to perform, the original assigner remains legally responsible. Assignment is commonly used in investment scenarios, such as wholesaling or in commercial transactions, where a buyer intends to take title in a different entity. Brokers may help buyers and sellers complete the contract, but must use approved contract forms. Writing or modifying contractual language beyond filling in blanks may constitute unauthorized practice of law. Creating the contract. Offer and acceptance. A sale contract is created through a process known as offer and acceptance. One party presents a written offer, and the other must accept it without modification. Any change to the offer, even if minor, constitutes a counteroffer and terminates the original offer. For example, if a buyer offers $215,000 for a home listed at $230,000, and the seller changes only the closing date, the original offer is void. The seller has created a new offer that the buyer must either accept or counter. Delivery is also essential. A signed contract is not binding until it has been delivered to the other party or their agent. For instance, if a buyer signs a contract but withdraws it before the seller receives it, there is no binding agreement. Once a buyer and seller sign the same set of terms and those terms are delivered, a contract exists. Equitable title and rights of the buyer. Upon execution of the sale contract, the buyer receives equitable title. This is the right to obtain full ownership at closing when legal title transfers through the deed. Equitable title permits the buyer to sue for specific performance if the seller attempts to back out of the sale. For example, if a buyer is under contract to purchase a home and the seller receives a higher offer from another buyer and attempts to cancel, the original buyer may sue to compel the sale. Courts generally enforce specific performance because real estate is considered unique. Understanding offers, counteroffers, and negotiations. Negotiations often involve multiple offers and counteroffers. Consider the example of James and Fred. James submits an offer of $215,000, $15,000 below asking. Fred responds with a counteroffer of $226,000, keeping all other terms the same. James accepts, and the deal moves forward. Each counteroffer acts as a rejection of the previous offer. Only when one party accepts the other's terms without modification does the agreement become binding? Delivery finalizes acceptance. Even if James signs the counteroffer, the contract is not binding until Fred receives it. Earnest money and escrow. Earnest money demonstrates a buyer's good faith. The funds are held in a neutral escrow account until closing. If the buyer defaults, the seller may receive the earnest money as compensation. If the buyer cancels under an allowed contingency, the earnest money is typically returned. In Arizona, earnest money is not required for a valid contract, but it is customary. Earnest money becomes non-refundable if the contract specifically states so, often called going hard. If earnest money becomes non-refundable, the buyer is entitled to a refund only if the seller defaults. Contract contingencies. Contingencies are conditions that must be met for the contract to remain enforceable. Buyers commonly include loan contingencies, appraisal contingencies, inspection contingencies, and sale of home contingencies. A loan contingency allows the buyer to cancel if they cannot obtain financing. An appraisal contingency allows cancellation if the property does not appraise for the purchase price. Inspection contingencies permit cancellation if repairs exceed a certain threshold. Contingencies must be clear, specific, and time-limited. Vague or open-ended contingencies can render a contract unenforceable. Default by buyer or seller. Because the sale contract is bilateral, either party may default. Buyer default usually results in loss of earnest money or potential lawsuits for damages or specific performance. Seller default may result in the buyer suing for specific performance, damages, or cancellation. Review summary. In this chapter, you learned how the modern real estate marketplace connects directly to the contract for sale. Real estate is a complex business involving many professional specialties and property types, all of which rely on contracts to guide transactions. A sale contract is the centerpiece of the transaction and establishes the obligations both parties must fulfill. You examine the elements required to create a valid contract, including offer, acceptance, delivery, consideration, and signatures. You learned the importance of equitable title and how it protects a buyer's rights. You explored negotiation through offers and counter-offers, the role of earnest money, the function of escrow, and the significance of contingencies. Finally, you reviewed how default by either party affects remedies and outcomes. By mastering these concepts, you gain the ability to interpret, explain, and use real estate contracts with professional skill. Discussion. Why do real estate brokers rely on standardized contract forms rather than drafting contracts themselves? Answer. Standardized forms protect brokers from practicing law without a license and ensure that widely accepted legal language is used consistently. These forms reduce the risk of errors, protect consumers, and comply with state laws that require certain provisions. How does equitable title protect a buyer during the escrow period? Answer. Equitable title gives the buyer the legal right to complete the transaction, even before receiving the deed. If the seller attempts to cancel or sell to someone else, the buyer may sue for specific performance to force the sale. Why is delivery required, and how might failure to deliver affect the contract? Answer. Delivery ensures that both parties have officially received the agreed-upon terms. A signed contract not yet delivered is not enforceable, meaning the offering party may withdraw it without consequence. How do contingencies balance risk between buyers and sellers? Answer. Contingencies protect buyers from unforeseen issues, such as financing problems or inspection findings, while also giving sellers clear deadlines and expectations so that the transaction continues to move forward. Closing remarks. Understanding the contract for sale is essential for every real estate professional. It is the backbone of the transaction and the document most scrutinized by clients, lenders, title companies, and attorneys. Mastery of this chapter not only strengthens your knowledge, but increases your confidence when guiding clients through one of the most significant decisions of their lives. As you move forward, remember that contracts reflect both legal obligations and professional integrity. Precision, clarity, and a solid understanding of the concepts covered in this chapter will serve you throughout your career.